What will we be learning during our study of First Kings? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we begin our study of the book of First Kings on walking through the Bible.
Of his word, the glory of his cross.
In today's lesson, we remain in the Old Testament and begin the 16th study of our walk through the Bible, a study of the book of First Kings. All told, it will take us 68 lessons to cover this book, with the teaching of each lesson being about 5 to 8 minutes in length. We hope you'll join us for each lesson of this study. First Kings is the 11th book of the Old Testament and the 6th book of the 12 Old Testament books that primarily give us the national history of Israel. The book picks up where 2 Samuel left off, with the close of David's reign as king and the beginning of the reign of his son Solomon following his death. The first half of the book will cover the reign of Solomon, the last king to reign over the united nation of Israel before the nation split into Israel and Judah during the days of Rehoboam. Thus, following this division, the book will alternate back and forth, giving us the exploits of different kings in both Israel and Judah. What we will find is that in Judah there will be a mixture of kings that follow God and those that don't, while in the northern nation of Israel there will not be one king that follows God. This is because when the kingdom split, Jeroboam, the first king of the northern nation, set up golden calves at Dan and Bethel, leading Israel off into idolatry. Thus, as long as this idolatry was to continue, there could not be a righteous king, because God does not accept false worship of other so-called gods. Like it was with 1st and 2nd Samuel, the book of 1 Kings was originally attached to the book of 2 Kings in the Hebrew Bible. However, when the Greek Septuagint was translated, these books were split up into what we have today. The title of the book is very appropriate, since it looks at the careers of the various kings of Israel and Judah, with the exception of Saul and David, Israel's first two kings. But just like it was with 1st and 2nd Samuel, the author of this book is unknown, though it does show signs of inspiration due to its historical accuracy and doctrinal consistency as it concerns the salvation through the Messiah that is found in other places in inspired scripture. Tradition holds that Jeremiah is the writer of these two books. Jeremiah is believed to be such for three reasons. One, the prophetic tone of the book, where the success or failure of each king of Israel and Judah is judged based on whether they obeyed or disobeyed God. Prophets of God would generally write in such terms, while those who weren't prophets would likely focus on something else, like the books of Chronicles focus on the worship of God, due to it likely having been written by Ezra, a priest. The second reason for Jeremiah's proposed authorship is that the style of writing is very similar to the book of Jeremiah, while the third reason is that there are statements throughout this book of certain conditions remaining to this day, which indicate that the author must have lived and wrote this book in the period before the Babylonian captivity. However, it is impossible to prove that Jeremiah wrote this book, and ultimately it doesn't matter, for whoever wrote it was inspired of God, meaning that God directed this person what to write. But because the author is uncertain, so too is the date, though there are certain clues given. The phrase "to this day" refers to things that existed before the Babylonian captivity, so the book must have been written before then. The book must also have been written after the reign of King Jehoshaphat, who died in the mid-800s BC, since this book closes there. So the earliest the book could have been written is the mid-800s BC, with our date range coming all the way down to the destruction of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC, if the authorship by Jeremiah is correct. So having now dealt with the author and the date of this book, why is it important that we study 1 Kings? What is its overall purpose? Well, first, there is a historical purpose to studying this book, in that it relates to us the significant acts of the kings of Israel and Judah as it concerns God's plan and covenant, leading up to the redemption of mankind through the Messiah. The author did not have any intention of giving us these exploits out of a sense of nationalistic pride, for various acts that secular authors might have included are excluded from this book. Rather, each king is evaluated based on their relationship with God in their covenant responsibilities. We see the continuation of the Davidic kingdom with Judah, beginning through Solomon and ending in this book with Jehoshaphat, a period of about 120 years. Remember from 2 Samuel 7 that God promised to David that the Messiah would come through his seed, and that unlike Saul's kingdom, David's kingdom would continue. We see God keeping that promise here in 1 Kings in spite of some evil kings in Judah. Along with showing the fulfillment of God's plan to David, the book also spends a lot of the latter part of the book actually focusing on the kings of Israel and how they went off into idolatry. Following the death of Solomon, we're only going to discuss 4 kings of Judah, while we're going to discuss 8 kings of Israel. Now this is largely because the kings of Israel tended to rule for a lesser period of time, but even with this being true, the book didn't have to focus on them. But it chose to in order to show us the depravity that Israel fell into following their fall into idolatry. The most famous prophet in this book, Elijah, is going to be a prophet to the northern nation of Israel, not to Judah. So from a historical perspective, it is important to study this book. But it is important to study it from a doctrinal perspective too. The book of 1 Kings is intended to teach that obedience to God's will brings success, while disobedience leads to personal and national disaster. We see this through the reigns of Solomon at different stages in his life, and then we see this consistently in the reigns of the kings that follow both in Israel and Judah. However, we also learn that God's plans will be carried out even through man's failures, as seen through the promises of God concerning the Davidic kingdom and the city of Jerusalem, not ending through the judgments pronounced on Solomon. Overall then, this will be an interesting study, one that I hope you'll join us for. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Kings chapter 1, verses 1 to 14, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.